Hello and welcome to another edition of And Did Those Feet, the podcast that explores the world of English football from 1945, the end of the war, to the 1970 World Cup. And I'm joined as ever by Karl. Hello, Karl.
Hi, Peter.
Karl, we're going to talk about Stan Cullis today. And I reckon if you took 100 football fans under the age of 25, 99 of them wouldn't have that clear a picture of who Stan Cullis was. But he was among the most significant figures in English football from the war on. Tell us a bit about him.
Yeah, so as a player, he he joined Wolves in the late 30s under Major Buckley. He got into the first team and in fact very quickly became captain. He was centre half, known as a defender who was very prepared to play out with the ball and take risks with possession. But he did it very well indeed. He captained Wolves and he got a dozen England caps,
And captain
including
England, in
a
fact.
cap where he was captain. The war then, of course, interrupted his career as it did with many people. But in the war, he played in 20 wartime internationals, captaining half of them. So he was still very much playing. And then after the war, Wolves were still very strong. And in the first proper season of football, the first season of league football, Wolves came very close indeed to winning the title. In the last game of the season, they only needed a draw at home to win the league, but they lost to Liverpool.
His real significance
But
is as a
that
manager,
turned
really,
out to
isn't
be
it? I
Cullis'
think
last game.
his real significance is as a manager, perhaps. So
Yes,
three
absolutely.
three league titles and two FA Cups in 12 years, and he's up there with Busby. I think Busby's got the same record or something similar, a very similar record.
Well, I think it's interesting because if you look at those 12 years, so he had after playing, he had one season as assistant manager. Then he became manager and he was only 31. In his first 12 seasons, Wolves were the most successful team in England because
Yes.
in those 12 seasons, Wolves were three times champions, twice winners of the FA Cup. Manchester United under Busby could match the number of league titles, but they didn't win the FA Cup in those 12 seasons. Newcastle won one more FA Cup, but didn't win a league title. So Wolves were out alone as the most successful team in the country
We'll
in the first dozen
we'll
seasons.
go into detail in a moment, but it's curious how in the 1960s okay, so he's very distinguished in the 50s. In the 60s, his career goes nosedives basically, and he just can't keep up with Busby. He ends up in the second division and going nowhere. But I think it's as a we'll go back all over all of these, but I think it's as a thinker that he's actually it's a thinker about football that he's most interesting and most significant. Um, really advocating a whole lot of things that we now take for granted: the Premier League, the place of TV and football, and so forth.
Yes.
Um, all very important and significant, but taken for granted today. But these were new then, and certainly Cullis's thinking about the game, although his playing of the game was perhaps quite traditional, his managing was quite traditional, but his thinking was quite radical. And I think, we owe a lot to the world that Cullis kind of came to dream up in his as a football thinker. Let's get back to that playing career. Then he's got a curious record as a player, isn't he? Because he's very successful. No, he's successful, but he's not very successful. As I said to you the
Yeah.
other day, he's got as many silver, he got the same number of silver medals as Harry Kane, basically. He
Mm.
keeps coming second. I mean, there is actually it's a pretty good side, that Wolves side. He captains in the late 30s, and they're
Mm.
quite distinguished, aren't they?
Well, yeah, I mean, at the end of the 30s, they were runner-up in the league in consecutive seasons. And in the second of those seasons, the last season before the war, they were second in both the league and the cup.
The only time, no, the
Um,
first time that's been done, apparently.
yeah, yeah. So you could say they almost won the double, but
They
they
did,
won nothing.
yeah, but they won
Um,
nothing, absolutely.
and then, as we were saying, then runner-up in the first league season after the Second World War as well. So very consistent. But he only played was it 6 seasons, something like that,
Yes.
of, of,
He's
of,
only
of
got
league
180
football with
games on or something.
Wolves.
It's quite a modest
Because of the war,
war, absolutely.
because of the war.
Mm. He was born in 1916, joined Wolves in 34. gets into the team in 36, 3 seasons in. He's straight into the England team, I notice,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
captain
yeah,
at 21 or so.
yeah. Very, very young and
There's this
very young as
extraordinary
captain.
story which is disputed about the game between England and Germany in 1938 in Berlin,
Yes.
in front of the massed ranks of the Politburo, of the whatever, Central Committee of the Nazi Party. Um, England wins 6-3. It doesn't go off without incident. Cullis isn't
No, I
playing,
think,
curiously.
yeah, it's not as famous as a so much as a 6-3 game in the way that
Indeed,
the famous Hungary game was. It's much
indeed.
more famous for what happened before kickoff with the England players giving a Nazi salute. And you're right, it is debated, but
Wikipedia gives
one
it to him.
version of events is that Cullis stood his ground and said that he wouldn't give the Nazi salute. He wasn't picked. Now, whether that is the reason he wasn't picked, I don't think is 100% clear, but it could well have been.
I checked on England Football Online, that brilliant website, to look at
Yeah,
who was centre half in the previous 6 matches, and the answer is Cullis. Cullis was
yes,
on a run of he was the automatic pick at centre half at number 5.
yes,
He's replaced in this game by Alf Young. So just to go to of Huddersfield, just who isn't on the same stature. Just to go back over this story then. So the FA are told, I think, by the Foreign Office that they must give the players must give the Nazi salute and, as it were, to pay. This is part of appeasement, which is the attempt by perfectly legitimate attempts in many ways
yeah,
by the British authorities to avoid a war. And the
mm,
idea is that you appease Hitler and there won't be a war. The players were told, you're going to give the Nazi salute. Cullis said some words to the effect, count me out, I'm not doing it. And it
yeah,
looks like he was dropped. Now, there is a question about whether this actually happened, but it's interesting that the rumour sticks to Cullis and it tells us something about him. Because
yeah,
if you're a sort of Nazi scumbag, that's not the kind of rumour that hangs around you. But
yeah.
if you're a man of principle and probity, as he was, um, then these kind of things
And
can be said of
it
you.
would tally with what else we seem to know about Cullis because he seemed um, the word stubborn seems a negative word, but there was a kind of stubbornness to him in terms of his um, approach to morality, I suppose.
Yes,
He always wanted very much to do the right thing. It was of the utmost importance to him. Um, Church seemed to have played a very big part in his life.
yes,
He was very proud of his, later on of his son becoming a vicar.
yes.
His faith was very important to him, and he very much wanted to do the right thing. So if it is the case that Cullis refused to give the Nazi salute, and that's at the price of being dropped from the England team, that I think would be of a piece with the Cullis that we seem to know.
That's why he was made England captain at 21, is he had an old head on young shoulders. And
Yes,
as you say, a man of deep principle. And this is reflected after the war, isn't it? I think you were telling the story with Albert Stubbins. So
yes,
Wolves are at home to Liverpool. It's the last day of the first season after the war, so it's 1947, spring of 1947. In fact, it's summer, isn't it? Because doesn't the season drag
it's
on?
pretty
It
much,
does.
yeah,
I think
yeah.
it's
There've
June
been a lot
47
of
or something like that.
postponed games, so the
If
season was
Wolves
finishing
beat
very late.
Liverpool, they'll win the title. Simple as that. Cullis has got a long story of coming second. This is his chance to come first. Albert Stubbins, the Liverpool forward, breaks through with minutes to go. If Cullis
Well,
lets him go, he'll score and Liverpool will win the title. If he pulls him down, Wolves will win the title. He
well,
forbears to
I
pull him
think
down.
it's a bit more. It was in the first half, and Liverpool were a goal up. But a second goal
Oh, I see. Yeah, okay, yeah, fair enough. Yeah,
would pretty much make it very difficult for Wolves. So
right.
Liverpool were already a goal up, but this was the second goal. So this goal would put Liverpool 2 up. It turned out Wolves pulled one back and it ended 2-1, which suggests Wolves at home. If Cullis had prevented Stubbins scoring, Wolves may well have come back and drawn the match. And uh, he didn't commit the foul that it would have been quite easy for him to commit, pulling Stubbins back, pulling his shirt.
Yes.
And Stubbins afterwards ever afterwards said he'd got massive admiration
Mm,
for Cullis not doing this. And
mm.
of course, this is the 1940s. This isn't today where a calculated risk would be don't make the foul because I'll be sent off. That wouldn't have happened in 1947.
No,
He wouldn't have been booked, let alone sent off.
no,
And the calculated thing to do would definitely have been to make that foul.
it would. Yeah,
Uh, but he didn't do it because it's not the right thing to do.
that's right.
And yeah, that says a lot about him. And when you add into the mix, not only was this a huge game because the title was riding on it, Cullis knew, and it had been announced, that this was his last ever match.
That's right.
He wasn't going to win the league as a player next season.
No,
Um, because, and again, this says a lot about his character. He'd been told earlier in that season, he'd received medical advice.
mm,
You should stop playing.
mm.
It's too dangerous because of the brain injuries you've had. Uh, and Cullis kept that to himself, played until the end of the season, and just had it announced on the day of the match
I mean, just to
that
clarify that,
this is my last game.
he's basically he's got to retire. He's been told by the doctors he's got to retire
Yes.
because he's blanking out after playing, and or he had the ball and it blanks out, and he spent time in hospital putting this right, or
Yeah, on a
recovering.
couple of occasions.
And it's serious, and he recognises that it's that there are no options. Actually, he has to back it in. So he becomes manager of Wolves after a year or two, and I think he's a year
It's
in which
one season as assistant.
that's right. And they put him in charge of the reserves. He takes the reserves to the top of the tree, and so it is 48-49 is his first season. And we go fairly quickly through this, but let's talk a little bit about his management style, and the kind of play that he really believed in because he is quite a radical thinker, but not in playing terms. And as a manager, although no matter what success he had, and this was a period of intense discussion, as we've always talked about in thinking about football and how to play it. Cullis actually has little to add to that. In fact, I would say that he's a stop on discussion. He, for example, in his book All for the Wolves, he has a chapter to explaining why the 1953 Hungarians and his Wolves team are playing the same kind of football. Well, of course, they really aren't playing the same kind of football. The Hungarians are moving the ball about quickly. They're much more in the idiom of the Spurs push and run side of 51. And whereas Cullis is wedded to the long ball game, the game of Charles Reap, the game of giving to the wingers get down to the byline, get down to the goal line and cross it back to the centre forward who buries it. And a centre forward wearing number 9 on his back, by the way.
That's right.
And in fact, I think if you want to see a good example of a great goal scored by Wolves, or exactly the kind of goal that Wolves would want to score, it's Jesse Pye in the 1949 Cup final. Don't know if that one strikes you, Karl, but there's a
Right.
cross from I
No.
think it might be Hancock's at right wing. The cross
Yeah.
comes in, and Pye's header is like a bullet. It's absolutely Alan Shearer-esque, and the goalkeeper's got no chance. But there's some kind of beauty in that move and in the simplicity of the move. Let me just give a quote from Jim Holden, who, as we were saying, is author of a biography of Stan Cullis. This is how he describes Cullis's managing. He says, flying wingers were the essence of the game, and Cullis had them par excellence in the now mature Jimmy Mull on the left and little Johnny Hancock's on the right. They poured their centres into the penalty box, where such attackers as Jesse Pye, bought from Notts County as an inside right but converted to centre forward, exploited them with foot or head. And that's a very good picture of the
Yeah.
kind of football that Stan Cullis was wanting to play. He wanted to get the ball out to the wingers. He wanted the wingers to get down the line to the byline. He wanted them crossing, and they wanted a centre forward in the middle to head the ball into the net. And I mean, I'm simplifying it really, but this isn't radical football. It's not a particularly unusual way of performing in
No.
the 1950s.
No. I mean, maybe the thing that made him perhaps a little bit more radical than some was how hard he worked on making sure that the players got fit. Maybe, but I think in terms of tactics, you're right. This wasn't progressive tactics, although he seemed to think it was.
I guess
That's
that's
the
true.
strange thing, and we are talking here about a highly intelligent man,
Mm,
And yet he seemed to think that, yeah, he's got the radical tactics. He's got in common with the Hungarians that we get the ball forward quickly. Well, the Hungarians did get the ball forward quickly, but via a huge number of short passes, whereas Cullis was about launching it.
I mean, if we were going to identify somebody from the modern era who he most resembles, a manager from the modern era he most resembles, where would you who strikes you?
Well, I mean, I suppose we're going back a little bit now, but in the biography that you mentioned by Jim Holden, um, it seems that Cullis wrote to Graham Taylor to say, ignore the criticism, keep playing the way you're playing. That's the right way to play football.
Brilliant.
And that was and obviously Graham Taylor, especially at Watford, was known for that style of football. Get the ball forward quickly. You will score goals by having a very small number
Yes.
of touches before your attempt on
I think
before
it's
your
three, isn't it?
attempt
I
to
think it's three touches is enough.
yeah
You should
yeah
have a goal after three.
yeah
And it's about,
get it
as
forward
I say,
quickly. A few
Como,
touches.
position of maximum opportunity, get the ball into the box. I
I
mean, I
mean,
was going to think,
I suppose what he did is to a degree, Cullis was what other people were doing almost by instinct. He was claiming that there was a scientific mathematical reasoning behind it.
yeah, yeah,
Maybe that's how he differed from some other managers who played similar football, is that Cullis really believed that there were statistics and numbers behind his reasoning. So in that way, he was a little bit like the modern Moneyball thinking,
yeah, yeah,
except this thinking led to tactics that were pretty basic. But what he did do, and what I think made him a great manager, is he found great players, developed these great players, was inspirational. He got them very fit. Uh, and if you look, even in his first season as manager, they won the FA Cup, and in the semi-final they played Manchester United, and at half time he'd got two cropped fullbacks,
yeah,
and yet somehow managed to hang on against a really good side and then win the replay. And the players gave him a lot of credit for the way he spoke to
it's
them at
interesting.
half time.
Yes.
But you're right, it wasn't because of radical tactics.
No,
It was more, uh, a battle cry,
yeah.
inspiring them in that way
No, it's interesting you
rather
say that he brought players through because I made a list of the players that came through his club who won their first England cap under him, and
right,
so it's over a course of 11 years, and the answer is 11 players come
right.
through.
Mm.
Uh, Jimmy Mullen 47, Johnny Hancock's 48, Bert Williams 49, Jesse Pye 49, Will Shaw 50 gets all those goals against Scotland. Remember, Bill
Yeah,
Slater 54 who plays in the World Cup in 54 and 58. Ron Flowers, who survives right the way through to 66. Eddie Clamp plays in 58 World Cup. Peter Broadbent, Norman Dealey, 59. So that's a tremendous achievement. I mean, you can see why the players believed in him because he was
mm.
going to do their career a power of good if they stuck with it. We against this radical achievements as a manager, radical thinking, and let's move on to that. I've got this a quote here from Andrew Longmore, which might give a bit of a
Mm.
flavour um, of what we're talking about here. No one whose thinking embraced the concept of midwinter breaks, who anticipated so
Yes,
uncannily the financial implications of televised football, and who pleaded so vehemently for a lightening of the players' workload, could be accused of thinking only in the present, says Longmore. In other words,
yeah,
Stan Cullen was thinking ahead into the future, and Stan Cullis was thinking ahead, and much of what he said came to pass and came to be
that's
the
right.
case.
He was a
And
vision. You
he's
really could say he was a visionary.
you could, and in fact, his greatest achievement hasn't been mentioned yet, and that he warns England, he warns English football, don't be frightened of TV because TV you go hand in hand with TV. and you can, it can help us, and so it proves, of course, in the modern era.
Mm.
But the great change is the European Cup, isn't it? I mean, that's the great development.
Yes.
And without
Yeah.
Stan
Yeah.
Cullis, I think we would have had a European Cup. But anyway, Stan Cullis was the person who really triggered it and brought it, in a sense, into the consciousness of European administrators.
Because it does seem that for all the trophies that he won, I mean, on the face of it, you think, well, he won 3 league titles, 2 FA Cups. That's a fantastic achievement. And they would be his greatest achievements. And yet, Cullis seemed to believe that actually it was the victories in the European games, technically games which were only friendlies,
Yes.
that were his great achievements,
Yeah.
especially at the end of 1954.
Yeah.
Uh, and the most famous example, of course, was beating Honved
Yeah.
3-2, coming from 2 goals down
That's right.
to
Exactly.
do it.
So
And this is
Honved, to be clear, are the big Hungarian side. They've got
yes,
6 players from Wembley '53 in their
yes,
team. I mean, it's the equivalent. It's effectively it's the Hungarian. Hungary is the best country, best side in the world at that time. It's the Hungarian national side at club level, and
yes.
um, I don't think Cullis himself would have pretensions in that direction. But nevertheless, they, as you say, 2-0 down. They won 3-2 live on TV,
That's right.
which is what sticks in people's mind.
Well, I mean, and I think that there was the famous newspaper headline, "Hail Wolves, champions of the world."
Yes.
And it was a great achievement to beat them. But you can see why there were people on the continent who were a bit put out by this,
Yeah.
by saying,
Well.
well, hang on a minute, it's
Yeah.
one game.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wolves were at home. It's a terrible muddy pitch.
Yeah.
This is not how you decide who the champions
No, indeed.
of 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 Europe are.
Yeah.
We need to have a better way of making that decision. And so I think you're right. The European Cup would have come about eventually, but maybe it came about a little bit quicker than it otherwise would have done because these continentals wanted to say, actually, no, Stan Cullis isn't right. Wolves haven't proved themselves to be the best side.
No.
Let's have a competition to decide
No,
that.
very much so. I mean, somebody said that world championships are not decided on quagmires, and even if they are, they're decided on
Yes,
neutral quagmires. Yeah. So,
it's very
yeah,
well
we're
put.
not going with that one. So,
Yeah.
but I think that's fair. But I mean, he did choose significant opposition, didn't he? It was Real Madrid, Honved, and Dynamo
Yes,
Moscow. I mean, they were big
yes,
fish, and
absolutely.
those victories because he beat all of them. But in particular, perhaps thinking about him again as a visionary in term not in terms of what's happening on the pitch, but what's happening off it, was that he conceived these games as floodlit games because he recognised that the floodlit games had a certain romance, a certain excitement,
Mm,
and in fact, I don't know if you're across this, but he even apparently designed playing kit shirts which would shimmer in the light
yes, yes.
and so would be easier to pick out. So for the peripheral vision, in that sense, he reminds me a bit of Jimmy Hill or someone like that, who was always very sharp in coming with these sorts of
Yeah.
insights. And so, but I mean, for Stan Cullis, he loved floodlit football. He loved evening football, as who does not? And he loved evening football, and he
I mean, I think
recognised
it's
that
interesting that,
there's a
as
TV
as a
audience there
boy,
too. You see,
as a boy, he wasn't allowed to go to grammar school because his dad wouldn't allow it. But he was very interested in educating himself.
yeah,
And one of the things he learned that I think was very interesting was Esperanto.
yeah, he did, yeah,
Now,
he did.
now, now, okay, he wasn't right about that. Esperanto didn't become the world's language, but he
No,
was the sort of person
yeah,
who could see oh yeah,
yeah. Mm,
Esperanto, that's the thing to learn.
mm.
Everybody will be able to communicate. He was that sort of forward thinker,
And remind
even
us
as a
why
boy.
he wouldn't
And I
do the
think
Nazi
that's
salute.
sort of similar to the things you were just talking about.
Yes, it's a reminder why he didn't do the Nazi salute as well. Esperanto is a kind of
Yes,
non-racial thing as against borders,
yes,
and that was exactly his spirit. Was that this nationalism is driving us all to disaster.
yeah.
So Cullis as a thinker about the game and administrator, he is on the wrong side in some arguments though. He's on the wrong side in the argument about maximum wage and the retaining
Yes.
transfer system. He really does blow up on that. There's a chapter in his book All for the Wolves. Did I show that? Did I show that to the camera? No, so there it is. Oh, I couldn't get it. Which a chapter where he uh, argues very strong. He says the players have played enough, and once you get players being paid upwards of £30 a week, then where will we all be? And I don't know what he'd think about Raheem Sterling, who won't get out of bed for less than half a million. But well, he got that wrong. Let's put it that way. But other than that, he was right about a lot of things.
He was.
The
I mean, in
retain,
some was he his very good friend was Matt Busby.
yeah,
They seem to have been very close.
mm,
I think partly
the
because
war.
of the war,
Mm.
yes, and you can certainly see similarities. They were both forward thinking in lots of ways, but also they were both the manager is the manager, and you know quite prepared to deal harshly with players who were getting too big for the boots, including the business about being paid extravagant wages of over £30.
No, you're right. And of course, he was a highly hierarchical in person. I mean, an authoritarian person, let's put it like that, as a manager.
Yes.
I mean, it wasn't a matter of, um, opening debates or getting the players to think for themselves. The players were told what they were expected to do, and they needed to get on and do it. And that's really quite sort of incongruous when you consider that he was himself a free-thinking individual who had great
Yeah.
insights and
I mean, maybe
kept
that's
getting
the
it
thing.
right.
Maybe some of the most interesting thinkers are people who seem like walking contradictions.
Mm, yes.
You know, a frightening authoritarian who didn't swear.
Yes, yes, indeed. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
In a football environment,
quite.
that's unusual. The radical thinker off. You put it to me, a radical thinker off the pitch and conservative on it.
Yes. Well, in that sense, he reminds me of Alf Ramsey. Ramsey was
Yeah.
also highly conservative off the pitch, but quite radical on it. In fact, quite daring on the pitch. Um,
Mm.
with his, I mean, in fact, it's an interesting point because, I mean, there are lots of what ifs with Stan Cullis. I wondered if he'd carried on playing. Let's take out the brain issue.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, he would have been presumably first choice for England after the war. We wouldn't have seen Neil Franklin, curiously, because the position was Stan Cullis would have been captain of the team, of
Mm.
the England team in 46, 7, 8, he's still quite young. He's still 31, 32.
Mm.
And he would have played centre half. So we wouldn't have seen Neil Franklin. Um, Another thing that struck me as well as we were researching this was what a brilliant centre forward Roy Swinburne was. I don't know if you came across him. Um,
Yeah.
he goals poured out of him. His last 11
Yes.
games, he had 17 goals before he was injured.
Yeah.
It struck me that either he or Tommy Taylor might have led the line in 58 for England, and we'd have had a much better chance. Goals
Mm.
would have been going in. He does actually in his book All for the Wolves. He laments what happened to Swinburne. Swinburne was clearly a fine player who fell foul of injury, a little bit like his manager, whose own career was so truncated. So,
Mm.
well, it's a fascinating story. It's a story full of paradoxes and ironies. He had a brilliant career, but at the same time, it kind of ended in failure. 10 years as a manager, where he was going nowhere and drummed out of the game in a way, but as a player by injury. And so, um,
And possibly his managerial career ended sooner than it would have done, maybe because of illness. Had he driven himself too hard?
yeah, it's interesting. Yes,
He was famously or infamously sacked by Wolves when he just came back from sick leave.
it's
Having had a period of sick leave, came back and was pretty much and then was immediately sacked.
it's right.
And
Yeah.
maybe he'd driven himself too hard.
Mm.
Um, and he was he 47
Yes, he was quite young.
when
Yes.
he lost his job as when he was sacked
Yeah.
as Wolves manager. And in those days, to sack a man who'd won so much was basically unheard of. I mean, in modern football, yes, you get Ranieri winning the league and being sacked the next season, that sort of thing. That happens now, but in those days it didn't.
No. I think there
You
was
know,
internal politics there that we're probably never going to recover,
yeah.
and a lot of bitterness as well. So, well, there we are. It's a really intriguing story, and he deserves to be better known. And perhaps we're doing our bit to that end. So there we go. And thanks again, Karl. Thanks as ever,
Thank you,
and
Peter.
we'll see you again next month.